A gorgeous dark-winged angel is resurrected after 2 centuries, as she gets defeated by 7 heroes to be enclosed forever in a hyperspace seal. She returns with her entire might to reinstate her lost glory, and to recollect her faithful accomplices, the 12 stars of the heaven, to defeat the invincible demon last boss, Efreet, whose army has created chaos in the human world. That once wrongly judged the dark-winged Diva, a beautiful woman with large majestic wings named Lufasu, is challenged by some heroes that she has been cornered, and now her dominance comes to an end. However, this ignites the wrath of Lufasu, who strikes them with her unmatchable powers, reminding them that it's their end that has come. One of the heroes has been waiting for this, so he draws out his mighty sword and attacks her with one bountiful swish. Surprisingly, he is successful in nearly taking down Lufasu, but the latter immediately opens the hyperspace seal. Before getting engulfed by that opening, she lauds the efforts of heroes as they actually did well in proving that they can surpass her, with that she gets completely enclosed in a small dark sphere. On the real front, Lufasu is just a gaming character controlled by a random game player, who regrets his character being defeated, as now it will take some time to resurrect it. However, he admits that Lufasu admirably held out till the end, but then that reversal skill upturned the whole game. The protagonist reverts to the chat window to check out the other players' reactions, and he is elated to find such an amazing response. It seems as if his character Lufasu has hit popularity among the other contenders, and even he got something out of that defeat. The name of that exclusive game is Midgard, which is a fantasy online game where there are swords and magic. One of the most splendid features of this game is that by playing with swords or magic, people blend in with each other due to the large diversity of races. The configuration of this virtual world is quite easy, and the language used is English, so that even the beginners can comprehend this game quite easily. Started in 2027, this year will be the game's 6th anniversary. The whole gaming idea is about the war, which means that for every country, its power players are fighting and putting everything in line. Ultimately, the defeated country will be swallowed by the winners. The whole game is a system where the player's actions are officially recognized and incorporated into history through short stories. Then the bigger events become the turning point, and will officially change the story without any kind of payment, just like bigger fish always devour the smaller and weaker ones, without leaving any trace. Another charm of this game is the number of options available in character creation. Even the protagonist took a few hours to create his perfect avatar, the dazzling Lufasu Mafalu of Race Angel. As he continued forging Lufasu on and on, the level of a variety of jobs kept rising. The protagonist changed and tested a lot of different jobs like a warrior, swordmaster, grappler, monster tamer, alchemist, ranger, strider, priest, etc. He even bought items and took a side job to afford them. He would participate in every public special event and always maintain the top player's rank. Later, he also managed to create his own country, and then began invading other countries. He absorbed every powerful country to create a single magnanimous one, thus being the first one in history to manage the unification of Midgard. As expected, Lufasu didn't become the subordinate of the official last boss Efreet, but instead, everyone became the citizen of his self-created kingdom, apart from the free players. Currently, Lufasu is about to become a semi-official character in the game. But then a problem occurs. This whole unification thing is becoming quite tedious, and is rapidly losing its charm game-wise, as the whole war system has become harder for beginners to attain new power. The protagonist discusses the issue with other high-level players, and it is decided that they will hold a big event. Soon they manage to create a turning point in history. They divided the unified forces into two. One side was the Supreme Ruler's army led by Lufasu, and the other one was the army of the light led by the heroes. Eventually, leaving the last official boss behind, the greatest decisive battle, with the supremacy of the game on the line, took place. As a result, Lufasu lost, as mentioned earlier. The protagonist gives himself the margin that since all the powerful players targeted him, he had no chance. That is the end of this event, completing the story, and the event was given much hype and became popular overnight. The protagonist stretches himself out of exhaustion and plans to call it a night. As he is about to shut down his computer, out of the blue something peculiar happens. The goddess of creation, Aravanasu, appears on the screen and offers him a new role. Eerily, his ID and password are automatically filled in, as if some other force is controlling his screen. The goddess is the creator of the world of Reinstate, according to the gaming scenario. A wave of novel excitement strikes through the gamer, as he assumes that even the admins cannot ignore Lufasu, as his world-famous character Lufasu has joined the same league as the great last boss Efreet. Now, the protagonist is not sure what kind of role he is being offered, but still, he decides to take the risk. He accepts the goddess's offer by pressing the yes button, and then a bolt of lightning strikes, after which everything around him goes dark. The protagonist becomes numb with astonishment, but slowly begins to revive when he hears some foreign voices around him. The people around him wonder whether the hero summoning has finally succeeded. However, some of the people are doubtful because of the protagonist's appearance. They cannot believe that someone they killed in front of their eyes has struck back unexpectedly. It is revealed that the ritual of the hero descent has gone terribly wrong. Not only did they fail to summon the hero, but they ended up releasing the seal of the supreme ruler. The already baffled protagonist is more astonished when the people around not only stare at him in disbelief, but lower their heads as if bowing to pay their respects. A flabbergasted protagonist realizes that he is also going through some prominent physical changes as he fumbles with his body all over. To his horror, it dawns on him that he has suddenly transformed into his self-created character Lufasu. The hapless guy literally freaks out, because how can he turn into a woman when in reality, he is a man? He is almost in hysteria when he wonders how can picture himself as someone whom he created for his own entertainment. As what motivation lies to a dude watching his own gender teach their enemies a lesson. The dude cries pitiably as he cannot picture himself as the real-life decoration piece that he himself created to feast his eyes upon. However, he composes himself and tries to assess his situation. He decides to grill the people around him. He spreads and twirls his wings wildly to create strong waves of wind enough to swipe off the king from his throne. Creating havoc, Lufasu bellows, demanding an explanation about the prevailing situation. The protagonist understands that now his voice has also undergone a change, following the gender transformation. But one thing he cannot digest is the strange arrogance in his tone. He remembers that he used that tingy tone when he was role-playing as Lufasu. Lufasu gets impatient when the trembling subjects do not raise their heads and reply to her inquisitions. Hilariously, whatever the protagonist is trying to say comes out all filtered in a snobbish and melodramatic way. For instance, when he is trying to say "is there something wrong?" comes out as "what's wrong, children of people?" Still, he apologizes for his lack of knowledge, as that might be a common stance to take by those people. He notices consciously that whatever he says appears very dominating and pressurizing. He checks out Lufasu's stats and finds out that the skill overpowering is activated somehow. By using that skill, one has high charisma, a talent allowing one to control other beasts. Also, that skill will prevent others from moving. The protagonist frantically switches off the overpowering skill to calm others and to pacify the whole surrounding. Soon, when the atmosphere has calmed down, slowly and gradually people begin to raise their heads. One person's identity is revealed to be an elf, courtesy of the treacherous wind blowing his cover, revealing his long pointed ears. He ponders that the surrounding aura seems to belong to an absolute being, unmistakable, and he condemns himself for reviving the supreme ruler. Lufasu's sharp ears immediately catch his whispers, and she pesters him to reveal her true identity. The elf hesitantly discloses everything to her, that even after 200 years, Efreet is so threatening that they haven't killed him yet. For this reason, they have decided to summon a hero in the city of Reinstate, but instead of the hero, Lufasu, the last boss, appeared. The protagonist ponders in disdain that a short story was fabricated into a 12-minute tale by that oh-so-dramatic elf. However, just as he predicted, he is inside the game Midgard, but 200 years ahead. Moreover, only the name of the city of Reinstate is still the same, and that literally moved him. The origin of the name of this world comes from the game Reinstate Online, and in this world, magic is the source of life. He notices that since he has appeared, the elf and the old guy who appears as the king have been shuddering out of fear, and now he feels really bad about them, as his presence seems to frighten them. He decides to quickly declare that he will not harm them in any way and leave. He assures them that he completely understands what they are going through, as Efreet is still going strong. He tries to convince them that they can be at peace, as after such a long time he doesn't plan on doing anything to this world. He gives a little phenomenal tinge to his speech by saying that the body that has already tasted defeat has stopped dreaming, so it is too late for him to achieve something like that. The king wonders whether the meaty words coming out of Lufasu's mouth are sincere. Lufasu insists that she lost, but she was completely satisfied by that fight, and she is still bothered that the people who defeated her couldn't beat Efreet, but now she would rather go out, watch this world, and feel its love. In short, the protagonist decides to pass the grinding task to the heroes. He adds that he is the king, without subordinates and an empty throne. The protagonist announces openly that currently he isn't the supreme ruler Lufasu, and is nothing more than a girl whose dreams got crushed. He insists that they must forget about her and keep on summoning other heroes, and with that, he takes his leave and assures them that if there is an opportunity, they will meet again. He immediately rushes towards the open balcony, spreads his wings, and flies away, despite the king's repeated call-outs to him. The protagonist is super excited to see himself flying freely like a bird. Astonishingly, he didn't need any prior training, as if he has been doing this for ages. He happily swirls and twirls, soaring merrily, but then comes to a halt, wondering why he came into this world. He has this sudden surge of excitement emerging from within as he ponders that in the gaming world, he had always loved Xskate Online. Then he became Lufasu, the character he put his heart and soul into creating from scratch, and now he is able to walk in her shoes. The protagonist wants to avail this thrilling opportunity to look around and do further exploring, but will still find a way to trace his way back home. He looks here and there, wondering where he must head next, when he spots a tall leaning tower with eerie wings protruding from it. He immediately recognizes that building is the Sky Tower, Mafalu Lufasu's base. Electrified, as his first destination is decided, he steps into the magnificent tower and heads towards Lufasu's throne. Although it has been the protagonist's first time visiting the base in real life, but the place seems spookily familiar to him, as if he had been living in this place for a long time. He has a blurry image from the past, where he can make out some familiar faces being together, and there were discussions about how they can make their influence stronger. Also, there were promises to hunt together, or have fun by talking about trivial stuff. He recalls how Lufasu and her friends used to drink merrily like idiots until late at night. He is perturbed by the sudden flooding of memories, and wonders who are the characters portrayed in them. As he steps forward, he can sense a presence that is quite uncanny, because there should be no one around besides him. Out of the blue, an unknown damsel appears looking at him meekly. When Lufasu inquires about her identity, the girl's face lights up, and she hysterically rushes towards her as if snapped out of a trance. She holds Lufasu's hands, trying to confirm her existence, while Lufasu is baffled by this sudden outburst by an unknown person. When Lufasu is unable to recognize her, the damsel becomes dramatic, calling Lufasu cruel and forgetful. Finally, she introduces herself as Dina, Lufasu's advisor. Dina has always been waiting for Lufasu's return to this tower for 2 centuries. Lufasu is perplexed because somehow she is unable to recall her, but then there is a sudden flash of lightning in her mind when she recalls that there was one Dina when she built this base tower. In the background, there were various objects, but at some point, she had stationed an NPC girl. The protagonist, currently endorsing Lufasu's character, remembers that he got excited and added a weird setting to Dina, something like Lufasu's advisor. Still, he doesn't have a memory of a humanoid object, as to him Dina was just a part of the background. He realizes that the girl he had actually forgotten had a life, and she spent all that time waiting for Lufasu. The protagonist realizes that he must change the way he is talking to her and should be more commanding. He apologizes to Dina for his recklessness and offers his gratitude for her unmatchable services. He lauds her efforts in protecting the base in his absence. A bizarre realization sinks inside his gut that the world that has swallowed him so suddenly isn't a game. Lufasu explains to Dina how the king of the country in the west wanted to summon a hero, but they made a mistake and ended up freeing her from hyperspace. Since she has been out of touch for the whole 200 years, Lufasu is quite ignorant of the world's current affairs, so she requests Dina to enlighten her about the events that followed after she left. Dina is honored and begins with those obnoxious heroes who defeated her. Each of the 7 heroes decided to create their own country. 4 of the 7 have already passed away from old age, but the other 3 have longer lifespans and are still alive. Beating those heroes, Efreet is still in good health even after. Dina informs her ominously that the 12 stars of heaven are all alive. However, after Lufasu's defeat, she was able to track the location of only 6 of them. Eventually, 2 of them joined Efreet to get revenge on the humans who defeated Lufasu. The official name of those 12 stars is the Supreme Ruler's 12 Stars of Heaven, and are NPCs that one can easily call friendly monsters. One of the classes that the protagonist mastered is Monster Tamer, and it has the skill to allow him to turn defeated monsters into allies, having a 100% success rate. No matter how strong the monster is, one can take it in. However, this is an issue of life and death, because the monsters can be too ferocious to defeat. Especially the boss monsters that appeared only once on special events are high-level monsters with extremely low success rates in taming them. The protagonist, who had personally tamed them, got carried away and made the 12 powerful ones, generals, under his direct supervision. He feels that even though it is his weak mind that brought the fiasco upon himself, those 12 stars have behaved quite pathetically, and must be reprimanded for their act. To think that those guys are causing trouble to the world is making Lufasu's stomach hurt. Now, Lufasu wanted to check around the world, but finding an objective is just too perfect for her adventurous mind. She has this urge to find out whether the 3 remaining heroes are players like her, and also if the 12 stars of heaven are acting stupid. Then she will stop and recover them. For now, she has decided to use the above information as guidelines. Next, Dina shows Lufasu a complete map of the world. Lufasu notices that from their position, the closest is Sual country, and inside that country dwells one of the 7 heroes Megis. Then inside the nearby volcano is the castle of the dragon, where one of the 12 stars of heaven, the ram, Aries, lives. Currently, Aries is continuously preparing for the invasion of Sual. Predictably, Lufasu decides her next destination to Sual. Dina warns Lufasu that if she is planning to recover all the 12 stars of heaven, that will be a long journey. Dina tells her not to travel without any preparations, since Lufasu is out of financial resources. So when Lufasu suggests that she might need to earn some money, Dina warns her that it might become quite difficult, as Lufasu's face is quite well known. However, Lufasu reminds her that 200 years ago, the world was without photographic technology, so not many people would remember her. Dina insists that Lufasu is naive, as races like the elves have longer lifespans even now, and they can clearly remember Lufasu. Also, Lufasu forgets about her huge black wings, which are a taboo symbol among angels. Lufasu gives up, because she knows that the story about black wings is actually the original one, and she could stand out questionably. Later, Dina suggests Lufasu an expeditious job, as social status and background don't matter. To Lufasu's bafflement, Dina advises her to become an adventurer, complete requests, and get rewards. Lufasu agrees and visits the Adventurers Guild. There on the bulletin board, she skims through the available requests. Soon she and Dina are off for an orc extermination request, worth the reward of 15 Eru. As per request, near the vicinity of the village, the orcs are building a nest, kidnapping young women, and taking their food. The villagers are troubled, because the orcs are breaking havoc in the village, doing whatever they please. Both Dina and Lufasu are hiding behind a cave, where 2 ferocious orcs are guarding the village opening. The protagonist had the idea that in the game, an orc is supposed to be a very precious species, because by killing it, one has a 3% chance of getting the orc's meat, which increases their total HP. However, Dina is quite intimidated by their hideous appearances, and she feels that the goddess might also be grieving about creating such artistic failures. Lufasu is shocked by Dina's razor-sharp tongue. Still, Dina agitatedly wants Lufasu to get rid of those ugly orcs as soon as possible. The protagonist decides to check out Lufasu's skills and stats level, and after a thorough examination, he finds out that all are at maximum level. However, the problem lies with him. It appears as the gamer boy goes weak on his knees at the sight of blood, and most importantly, he is not certain whether he is confident enough to kill monsters. He resolves to use the transmutation of 2 skills, Alchemist skill item creation, and a spur skill psychokinesis. The item creation is a skill that creates objects out of raw materials, while a spur's psychokinesis is a supernatural power. By using the killer combination of the above skills, Lufasu is able to throw hundreds of sharp short swords, all at once. The protagonist can even reproduce the item, throwing from an old and nationally popular RPG game. The sharp swords stab the completely oblivious orc guards on their faces and bodies, and both are put down in minutes. Now, the sight of flesh and gore makes the protagonist gag in disgust, as he feels that the game has turned into an 18+ affair. However, that feeling is totally short-lived, as the emotions within him aren't really stirred one way or another. Next, Dina and Lufasu enter the cave opening to look around for more orcs. Dina assures Lufasu to only take care of the extermination, while she will take care of the cleanup afterward. Soon they encounter several huge beasts ready to pounce on them. Dina begins to freak out as usual, not due to their level of ferocity, but because they don't fit her beauty standards. However, those unsightly beings are easily slayed by Lufasu. Now, the protagonist was a little worried about the type of attack that would be coming to him, but in an instant, he felt relieved, because thankfully those orcs were very slow compared to Lufasu, and their movements were even slothful. The protagonist feels insulted, because he feels the orcs are taking him too lightly, or maybe they are looking down upon him. However, he is more astonished when an orc is immediately taken down as soon as he slightly pokes it. Dina warns Lufasu that she has gone slightly overboard and must restrain herself a bit. Lufasu apologizes, but she observes that after 200 years, her attacks were quite similar to bringing a gun to a knife fight. She just cannot comprehend the sensation coming out of her fingers, and probably mistook the dosage. Meanwhile, the orcs are clearly flabbergasted by the wrath of that unknown winged woman. It dawns on Lufasu that it is not the orcs that have become slow or fragile, this is because she has become too fast and strong. So when two orcs try to reason with her about her identity, she doesn't even give them a chance to talk, but crushes them like cookies instantly. As for her, this isn't a fight anymore. It's just a guaranteed victory and a throwaway match. Soon, the fourth emperor of the orcs appears in front of her, adorned in all those ludicrous ornaments, and claiming to be the strongest. But the impatient Lufasu doesn't even give him a chance to complete his speech, and grinds him into an orc shake, even though it was her first battle with that body. Predictably, a frantic orc lord appears and pleads with her to spare his life, but Lufasu ruthlessly slashes it into half, pondering that she still hasn't carried out a battle with this body yet. Lufasu gazes at the sea of slayed orcs in front of her and wonders whether those were the last orcs. Dina assumes that Lufasu is right and points out a prison where all the kidnapped women are kept. Dina informs her that all women are okay, as the orcs didn't do anything to them. Dina declares that they have won the orcs' request. Orcs' fillets hold the effect of increasing one's vitality. It is said that slaying it without receiving any injuries provides one with 3% of vitality. Dina decides to prepare orcs' meat so that Lufasu can eat it later. Soon, Dina uses her special teleportation magic to transport the orcs' corpses to the base tower. Later, she will process them into meat and store them for later usage. Not only that, but she will dry the leftovers and sell them in the market as a way to make money. Soon each of the corpses is encased within a sizable teleportation circle. While Lufasu wonders at Dina's stupendous capability, especially her teleportation capabilities that are so handy, Dina advises Lufasu to head to the village as soon as possible. Both ladies are not aware that two terrified orcs are hiding behind the wall, waiting for Lufasu to leave the spot. Both feel that Lufasu is a monster and shudder at the thought of her large black wings. However, one of them remarks that the vicious woman with Inkai wings was sealed 200 years ago. Now, the remaining orcs have a complete intention to call out reinforcement. But before that, Lufasu uses her transmutation spell to create a magnanimous Furingnil's arm. That comic arm works like a bulldozer to smash the whole cave. A stupefied Dina wonders whether Lufasu had to go that far, but the latter explains that the orcs sent left behind would have been called other orcs, so that's why it was best to demolish the whole area. Later, the villagers express their gratitude to the valiant ladies and offer a bag containing 15 Oeru. While both Lufasu and Dina are leaving, a concerned villager points out to others that this time they were successful in the extermination of the orcs, but it's pointless if other monsters arrive. He is afraid that their village is so poor that they can hardly afford another quest. Lufasu secretly hears their pleas, and by using her transmutation skills, creates a splendid golem to give the whole village divine protection. As they leave, the village chief hysterically cries after them, as he wonders about the strange lady's identity, because he has heard that she took down the orc's nest all by herself, and then created a magnificent golem. He knows that this is not what an ordinary adventurer would do. However, Lufasu ignores him and leaves the village, as their next destination is Suval. During their journey to Suval, Lufasu notices some strange light dazzling the whole surroundings, and Dina mentions that it is mana. She adds that this ground has plenty of mana, and this means that they are getting closer to Suval. Lufasu feels pleasant in its presence and is aware of Dina's concern, because according to the game's settings, angels hate mana. Soon, Dina points to a magnificent place and refers it to be the country of Suval. Lufasu recalls that it was built by one of the 7 heroes Megres. She remembers how Megres and her hunted together a lot in the game. Suval is continually under attack by one of the 12 stars of heaven, Aries. Lufasu is here in Suval to find out whether Megres is a player like her and to stop Aries. Major magic country Suval concentrates its efforts on magic and scholarship education, and aspiring magicians and scholars from around the world gather here. Dina wonders about Lufasu's plans and where they are heading first. Now, Lufasu wants to meet Megis first, but then decides to gather some information. Sual is the Midgard of recent times, and Lufasu has to know a lot about this place. Dina finds the best place to fill up Lufasu's lack of knowledge, and even Lufasu's eyes lighten up when she learns that they are heading to a library. So when they stop a citizen about the directions of the library, the man instantly recognizes them as newbies and tells them to head to the east area. Currently, they are in the south area, so they have to go across the bridge on their right. He assures them that he will guide them halfway there. Dina expresses her gratitude, and the man introduces himself as Gantz, a mercenary protecting the borders. Dina introduces themselves as the wandering merchants, and when Gantz gives a suspicious look to Lufasu, Dina immediately introduces her as her owner. A considerate Gantz decides not to pry any further. While showing them the way, Gantz keeps on rambling about Sual, that it is a natural stronghold protected by a vast lake. Sual is divided into 5 areas: the residential area, where almost all the citizens live; the royal castle and the nobles area, where the royalty and the nobles live; the industry area, where the artisans gather; the commerce area, which is situated at the entrance of the country; and the scholars area, which is the core of the city, where people in pursuit of knowledge gathers. Gantz points out that right now they are in the south area, which is the commerce area, and the library they want to reach is in the east area, called the scholars area. Lufasu wonders that although a lake protects the country, what would they do if the monsters that can fly and swim were to attack them? However, Gantz insists that it is not easy to cross that lake. His speech is disrupted by a randomer reminding him that his break is over. Gantz apologizes and takes his leave, but hopes that their paths cross again in the future. Lufasu is a little agitated by his frankness and runs an appraisal of his stats. She is quite shocked to see that Gantz has such low stats. She wonders whether he is a novice mercenary. Dina explains that currently, compared to 200 years ago, the standard for fighting is much lower. Lufasu is disappointed to know that the fighting standards have dropped so sharply. Dina makes another appalling revelation, that the Sword Saint is supposed to be the most powerful swordsman, and his level is a mere 120. The protagonist is about to burst into flames due to anger, because there were a lot of high-level players, or even max levels like him in the game. An infuriated Lufasu begins yelling wildly, as according to her, there should be a limit to such humiliating low levels. Dina makes a wise comment that the people from the yesteryears were the strange ones, and since one only gets a single life, being able to reach level 1000 without losing one's life, now that kind of phenomenon doesn't exist anymore. The way to reach that kind of level is by fighting every single day like a madman, without resting. To devote oneself to training is nearly an act of madness. Dina enlightens Lufasu that it was that generation of heroes, who were doing things like rivaling warlords, who were actually crazy. A distraught Lufasu gives up, admitting that the world has altered a lot after she left. The protagonist compares the current situation with the previous one, and admits that the high targets were achievable back then, because the whole situation was a game. Even if a character died, it could be resurrected, without the gamer bearing a single injury. However, this is not possible in real life. Lufasu is still lost in her thoughts when Dina informs her that they have reached the library. The library is humongous with many floors, neatly racked and organized with books belonging to every genre. Soon, Lufasu reaches a section devoted to her. She thinks that it might be perfect to learn about how she is perceived in society, and for that she uses Asper's telekinesis. She finds out about a history investigation of whether Lufasu Mafalu was really evil. It is written that Lufasu was the only supreme ruler in history who managed to unite the entire world. She also finds books regarding the 7 heroes indifferently. She finds research from a historian named William, who said whether humanity made the wrong choice in killing the supreme hero, and the 7 heroes must be penalized accordingly. According to William, it was humanity's biggest mistake. Lufasu wonders whether the books present in the library are all authentic, because the country was put together by one of the 7 heroes, and won't the authors be tried for putting a book criticizing the heroes in such a place? However, Dina relieves her from the misunderstanding that Lufasu isn't despised that much, and people don't think of her as an evil ruler. However, some books in the library are written against Lufasu. Dina assures her that as time flies, the bitterness and fear from those dark times will dilute by themselves. The people who are under Lufasu's control didn't need to fear the demons, and that's why the heroes are reconsidering their opinions. To Lufasu, it seems as if people are treating her like Napoleon or Oda Nobunaga, respecting her out of terror and fascination. If one looks into the history of Oda Nobunaga, he really did some scary stuff, and now people think he's cool and popular. People usually have flickering mindsets. Sometimes they think a person is dark and despised, and then he suddenly becomes a star and glorified. Finally, Lufasu chooses a suitable book to devour through in complete seclusion. However, Dina accompanies her, even if she wants to delve into a book or two. Time passes, as Lufasu gets engrossed in that book that states that Lufasu Mafalu was an angel, who made her sudden apparition 200 years ago, and in a blink of an eye united the entire world. The reason she tried to rule the world is still a complete mystery, but still, the humans wrongfully rejected her, freeing themselves from that control. Ironically, the humans ended up pleasing the demons, and the demon clan, being their biggest threat, didn't miss the opportunity and attacked them. To fight against the demons, the 7 heroes upstated an army of novice warriors, but they had already lost their unity when they fought against Lufasu, and the battle against the demons turned out to be a complete failure. As a result, 60% of the world became the demons' territory, and humanity's habitable zones were drastically reduced. Right now, humans occupy about 30% of the total world area, and they are being cornered slowly and gradually. The 7 heroes were also reduced to 3, and those 3 are barely maintaining the equilibrium, but it wouldn't be surprising if the world came to a sudden crumbling end. Currently, the prevailing peace is temporary, just like it is wavering on a thin surface of ice. The alarming scenario is, despite knowing that the world will collapse soon, still a solution hasn't been found to break free from this dilemma. After reading the whole book, Lufasu breaks in cold sweat and trembles in misery as she comes face to face with the harsh reality that the world is on the verge of destruction. Now, she already understood that the situation is quite questionable, enough for them to summon a hero since Efreet is going strong, but being controlled by demons. That's unimaginable by Lufasu. The protagonist taking the form of Lufasu shudders as in the game, they did everything for fun. But to think that the reality will roll it in such a super disastrous direction. Out of the blue, the whole library begins to tremble uncontrollably, shaking off all the books from the table as well as the racks. Suddenly, it's raining books everywhere, and the people in the library begin to run here and there in distress. A frightened Dina takes refuge in Lufasu's arms, who thinks that it might be an earthquake. Dina is astonished by the composure maintained by Lufasu, who explains that earthquakes are quite common in Japan. Lufasu is shocked when Dina mentions that earthquakes rarely happen over here. Lufasu remembers that she gave the power to intentionally create earthquakes to Aries. It might be a coincidence. But if it isn't, then Lufasu guesses that it is the advent of Aries. Even Dina concurs with Lufasu, as she also feels disturbances in the mana around the commerce area. Lufasu remembers that this is the place where Gantz is. Meanwhile, in the commerce area, a disaster has struck with broken stalls turning into rubble, and a bunch of frantic people lying on the ground due to imbalance. Soon, all the mercenaries are ordered to stand by, are commanded to urgently arm themselves, and gather in front of the border. The captain guesses that this time, the enemy is going all out, coming on the front personally. Gantz is impressed by the number of demonic armies, and wonders whether the main army is yet to come from the castle. However, the captain is left with no choice but to push the current army back, as the enemy goes to the trouble of greeting them and giving them ample time to prepare. Gantz guesses that the earthquake was signaled for a war declaration. The captain suddenly remembers the deceased Lufasu, who would always do a declaration of war when invading and never made any surprise attacks. Gantz grits his teeth and refers to Aries angrily that he always imitates his master Lufasu in weird ways. Meanwhile, Lufasu cries in astonishment as she spots a fuming Aries heading rapidly toward the human land. Lufasu lauds the efforts of the humans, that their levels dropped considerably. They did well in enduring Aries' invasions until now. Lufasu predicts that one of the 12 stars of heaven, Aries the Ram, if kept the stats from the game, then his current level must be a whopping 800. Meanwhile, the fast and furious, anger-struck Ram trots and snorts towards Suval, demolishing everything coming his way. While the whole country of Suval is a mess, with people fleeing for their lives, when a distraught servant informs Megres, one of the 3 remaining heroes, that Aries is personally leading the monsters, and is here to wage the most ferocious war. The poor soul begs Megres to protect the country and its people. Megres stops whatever he is doing immediately, and resolves to attack Aries with Revia. Meanwhile, Lufasu is using her own transmutation method, which according to her would be somewhat rough. Both Lufasu and Dina stand on a triangular ledge attached to the top of the building, as Lufasu decides to launch it with psychokinesis. Dina freaks out as she thinks that she might fall off that barely hanging ledge, but Lufasu tells her to hold her closely. Soon the triangular ledge takes off, just like a fighter jet, while a terrified Dina dangles from Lufasu's back. A flashback is shown, in which a small and adorable rainbow sheep is crying. It is then found by an angel, who advises it to stop lamenting over its fleeting self. Instead, it must repay its opponent with an arrow or something. If something has been stolen, then it must try to steal it back, instead of crying over spilled milk. Soon, the angel trains the little sheep to be stronger, teaching it to fight back with all of its strength. The angel admits that even she is inexperienced, so to crunch everything, they will need more power. The angel spreads her large and Inkai wings and vows to dye this world with their colors under her rule. She names the little sheep Aries and takes it along with her. This was the first meeting between one of the 12 stars of heaven, Aries, and the black-winged supreme ruler, and no matter how much time passes by, the colors of those important souvenirs never fade. At present, the furious Aries has reached the entrance of Sual, where Gantz and other mercenaries are all prepared to take it down. However, Aries is followed by an army of monsters who easily take the humans down. While fighting valiantly, Gantz ponders that the main army hasn't arrived yet. He fears that if it goes on like this, then they won't be able to hold out. The other soldiers begin to get hysterical when they observe Gantz being unable to take down those innumerable monsters because he is supposed to be the strongest of all mercenaries. They are sick with anxiety that at this rate they all will be annihilated before the main army arrives. Gantz loses hope as his leg gets injured. A horrendous monster is about to attack him when astonishingly he feels a splash of water over him. Gantz cannot believe that finally the guardian deity Levia has moved. He turns around at the sound of the screeching wheels and finds a man sitting in a self-driven wheelchair approaching the soldiers. The man commends the soldiers for resisting the attack for so long, and the soldiers cry in disbelief as the man in the wheelchair is none other than the sage King Megris. They are relieved that finally they are saved from all that viciousness. Soon, Megris commands Levia, the water dragon monster, to exterminate all the monsters. Soon, it is raining havoc as the water from the lake transforms into a giant monster. Even Lufasu is awestruck and admits that Megris is no joke at all. Even Dina is surprised because she thought that Lufasu did all of this. However, Lufasu refutes and lauds Megris' talent again as he transmuted an entire lake into a golem. The protagonist recalls that in the game, it wasn't possible to use a field in transmutation. Lufasu uses her observing eye skill to find out more about the water golem and comes to know that it has a level of 500 and 180,000 HP. Even if Aries shows up out of the blue, Levia might end up winning. This is because Aries' attribute is fire, while Levia's attribute is water, so even with the difference in levels, the superiority of the water attribute is huge. Not only that, but Megris, who has a level of 1000 just like Lufasu, has also arrived to hold Aries back. According to Lufasu, the issue of the battle has already been decided. Next, Lufasu decides to take a sneak peek at Megris' stats. However, she knows that the same level or above won't be displayed. She is startled to find out that Megris' level has stooped down to a mere 500. This is because Megris' body has weakened a lot, as his lower body is undergoing paralysis. Half of his levels and his stats were reduced, plus several classes were eliminated. Not only that, but Megris also has some weird debuffs, one of them being Loser's Stigma. Lufasu is shocked because she has heard a prevailing rumor about him being cursed. There was a rumor that after being defeated by Efreet, the 7 heroes were cursed, and now they all were in a state where they could manifest only half of their original strength. The protagonist remembers that there weren't any troublesome curses like that in the game. This means that Levia is really the last line of defense, and the current Megris doesn't have any strength to transmute Levia anymore. In other words, he needs to win against Aries without losing Levia. As usual, Lufasu spaces out and is brought back to Earth by a frantic Dina, who points out that Aries has finally made his appearance. Both Megris and Aries stare at each other with a piercing glare. As Aries is about to make its attack, Megris warns everyone around him not to get hit by the vapors released by the ram's nostrils. Megris knows that Aries wants to vaporize the country with its people. A wrathful Aries uses a powerful demolishing spell called Mesaltem that will inflict continuous damage just by touching anything. This was a special skill given to Aries by Lufasu. However, Megis doesn't give up and releases a tidal wave to attack Aries. However, the ram jumps to dodge the attack, and people look at it with awe at how it could leap with such a gigantic body. Now, Megis is worried that the frenzied ram might crash into sual, so he hysterically calls out to Levia. A gigantic wave of water rises from the lake and engulfs the ram into it. Soon, there is a collision of fire and water as the mob watches the whole battle in great stupor. It is quite evident that Levia is empowering Aries completely by swirling it in a whirlpool of water. The excited crowd roots for Levia and Megis. However, Megis notices something terrible happening. The water composing the body of Levia is slowly turning into vapors, and because of this, Levia cannot recover. It dawns on him that this has been Aries' motive all along. However, at this point, they cannot pull out, but there is something Megis can protect. A hapless Megis regrets his powerlessness to keep relying on Levia's strength. Dina wants to know Lufasu's opinion on this significant battle. According to Lufasu, if one considers the attributes, then Levia is at an advantage, so Levia can easily win the battle. But right now, under the effect of Mesaltum, Levia's max HP is being reduced. That's probably Aries' real objective, so in the end, Levia will be the one to lose the battle. In other words, this is a tactic focusing on the next battle, weakening Levia to be superior afterward. The plan is to allow the opponent to win this battle, to be the winner in the end. Aries most likely took the extent he could fight into account before retreating, and Megis cannot chase very far. This is what Aries is trying to do, to engross Levia into a fight with itself, while other monsters can come and take over the country. By that time, Megis will be unable to act quickly. That's quite crafty for a pea-brained ram. But who can blame him? It was Lufasu who taught him to fight like that in the first place. The protagonist agrees that in the game, it was Lufasu who taught Aries to fight so cleverly. In the game, a tamed monster will always stay and walk behind you. There are no conversations or personality understanding situations. So even though Lufasu is Aries' master, she doesn't understand anything about him. Rainbow sheep are supposed to be peace-loving monsters, who would never harm a soul. Unlikely, Aries kept on attacking frequently. This is because the heroes beat Lufasu, and he is thinking about taking down Lufasu's enemies for her. This is the best reason Lufasu can think of, in defense of Aries' unforgivable actions. Now, it is up to Lufasu to stop him from further breaking havoc. Lufasu decides to jump in at the spot where both Levia and Aries are wrestling. A frightened Dina wonders whether Lufasu has lost her mind, but Lufasu doesn't care and dives in with Dina dangling behind her. Lufasu gets closer to Aries and tries to stop it by clearly mentioning that it is not her will to look for vengeance, and she doesn't remember asking him to do anything of that sort. She kicks his cosmic dumb head and orders him to cool his head down for a bit. Next, Lufasu uses a warrior's skill called Backsword Strike. This is a special skill made to go easy on someone, and HP cannot reach 0 while using it. As Lufasu lands in front of Megis, with a horror-stricken Dina clinging close to her, Megis wonders about this strange hooded person. Lufasu calls out to him that he is having a hard fight, and it must be fate that she stopped by sual, so now she would give him a hand. Megis immediately recognizes that empowering voice. He becomes puzzled and cannot believe his ears, as the voice seems so familiar. Earlier, Lufasu was introduced as Sufalu to Gantz by Dina, so Gantz immediately recognizes them. Lufasu resolves to ask Aries for forgiveness, and Dina is advised to follow Lufasu afterward through teleportation. Dina's mind is still boggling with that adventurous jump, but she obliges. Lufasu decides to stop Aries alone, and Megis tries to warn her that someone is pulling the strings from behind, so she should be careful, as that person instigated and used Aries' desire to take revenge. Megis peers at her closely and warns her again if she is the person he thinks she is. Lufasu has her back towards him wearing a dark hood, but still she wants to question him about whom he is talking about, but then decides to go otherwise and take his warning. Lufasu then uses a Strider skill that closes the distance between one and their enemy by 0. She immediately rushes towards Aries and wonders when she met Aries for the first time again. The dreamy lady spaces out again and goes into a flashback when she wasn't at her max level, and it was the time when she had just started to be a tamer. She was troubled because she didn't know what to get for her first monster, and that's when she met Aries by chance, who is a rainbow sheep. In the game, it is a super duper rare monster with only one existing in the world. The poor sheep was stuck and couldn't run, so when Lufasu thought it would attack, he didn't have any power at all. Still, Lufasu tried to capture that feeble sheep for some reason. Now, the monster had troublesome weaknesses, but since he was Lufasu's first one, she grew attached to him. She recalls how hard she tried for that obstinate soul to level up. In that way, she transformed a weak monster into a stronger one, and even when Lufasu reached level 1000, Aries saved her many times. Aries is the one Lufasu has known for the longest period. Lufasu pictures that stormy, infuriated Aries as that small, helpless crying sheep from earlier times, whose memory flooded in unintentionally when she was first resurrected in this world. The protagonist fears that his own memories are slowly and gradually fading, only to be taken over by Lufasu's memories. It seems as if his and Lufasu's intentions are colliding. Soon, she reaches in front of that humongous ram, while Dina pops out from a porthole. The ram is baffled to see a hooded stranger getting so close to him valiantly. To Lufasu's surprise, for the first time, he talked, wondering about her identity. Lufasu uses that same overpowering tone to reply to his question, and this completely startles Aries. He cannot believe his ears. His nostrils begin to weaken and then quiver with emotions. And as Lufasu overturns her hood to reveal her true self, Aries goes dumbfounded. He is unable to control his emotions that freely flow out from his revealing eyes. Still, he cannot believe the whole scenario because he knows that Lufasu was dead long ago. He tries to compose himself and regains his previous austereness because he is dubious about the imposter standing in front of him. Lufasu removes the blurriness by clarifying that she is unmistakably Lufasu Mafalu herself. However, a new wave of wrath pierces Aries as he yells at Lufasu to shut her mouth and calls her a phantom. However, Lufasu asks Dina to stand back and bellows at Lufasu that she is neither a phantom nor a dream. Lufasu challenges Aries to come at her, as she wants to check out how much he has grown in these last 200 years. Also, she knows that Aries will perform well to clear his doubts about her being the real Lufasu. Aries mellows down a bit as he gazes closely at Lufasu. Still, he grits his teeth in sheer fury and takes a huge leap towards Lufasu, who immediately dodges his attack. However, Lufasu can feel that exciting tingling within her body, and she smiles gleefully at that uplifting feeling, as finally, since coming to this world, she is encountering a decent battle. As the stubborn ram races again towards her, she can actually feel her heart bounce in sheer exuberance. Aries makes rapid advances towards Lufasu, but she nullifies each of them, remembering the time when that cute little sheep tried to hold her hand with his mouth. Impulsively, she draws out her hand and pats Aries' huge forehead, declaring him cute. The poor woman has gone blind from emotions and has again reached Neverland. The ram becomes so stunned that unintentionally, with his whole volcanic pressure, he manages to tear apart the ground and falls helplessly, taking along Lufasu with him. As they land underground, a jovial Lufasu provokes him not to hold back, but to come at her with his full power. Aries gets infuriated and ignites flames everywhere. Lufasu realizes that those flames might be Aries' maximum output. Still, she ignites his wrath by calling out to him to come at her with full power, and she will show him that she can block all. Soon, Aries blasts her with a massive ball of flames, trying his level best to ward her off, but he has to realize that his opponent is none other than Lufasu, who easily blocks all the flames directed at her. Lufasu again draws out her hand to award 200 years worth of patting to Aries, but this time, she is shockingly electrified by Aries, who storms at her that it's not over yet. The ram breaks havoc, demolishing the rocks around him into rubble. When Lufasu decides to give him a halt, she lets out a massive fist and punches him so hard that it sends the wild ram deep into a pit, from where he seems like the same crying sheep from 2 centuries ago. Lufasu gazes at him thoughtfully and wonders that even after what Lufasu did to him, he is unable to recognize her. Aries painfully lifts his head, and the protagonist can feel his and Lufasu's intentions coincide. He ended up losing control and knocking that stupid ram out. Lufasu leaps and jumps into the pit to get close to her beloved pet. She reaches out her hand to him and longingly asks him to accompany her. The obstinate ram doesn't budge. It seems he has become too cynical in all these years. Lufasu decides to pet him more when a mosquito-like being buzzes from afar, rapidly falling toward her. In no time, a strange, wailing girl falls from the sky and clings closely to Lufasu. Lufasu watches her in astonishment as the girl hugs her uncomfortably tight and apologizes. Still, Lufasu tries to console her and tells her not to cry. The girl looks at her with her huge tearful eyes, and immediately she reminds Lufasu of that cute, cuddly crying sheep. Lufasu is struck by a 10,000 bolt of lightning, when she realizes that the strange girl is none other than Aries. The protagonist recalls the times when he was having a chat with one of those 7 heroes, a player from Midgard. They were trying to decide the personification of Aries. Midgard suggested that the rainbow sheep should be transformed into a beautiful girl. However, the protagonist protested that Aries is actually a boy. Midgard playfully punches that they are at the age of traps. So the protagonist had no choice but to give in because the majority of the players were in favor of Midgard. Thus he ended up leading astray the gender of Aries' personified form, and he really regrets that mistake he made a long time ago. At present, Lufasu makes sure that Aries has settled down and composed herself. Lufasu runs an appraisal of the girl's stats to confirm and finds out that she has the same stats as Aries. She notices that her level is the same as in the game, 800. This means that the setting, where pet monsters cannot have higher levels than their masters, is still ongoing. However, Lufasu remembers that her powers have increased considerably than before. This shows that Aries has been working hard these 200 years. Lufasu explains briefly to Aries that she is on a mission to take back the 12 stars of heaven along with her. Lufasu commands Aries to accompany her as she won't take any objections. Aries is honored to be the first one, and what transformation from a headstrong and exasperated ram to a timid and cute little girl resembling that adorable and cuddly rainbow sheep that once won Lufasu's heart. Even Dina is in tears watching the emotionally driven soap live, as Aries readily obliges to work with Lufasu and the strange girl, whom she doesn't recognize. Dina tries to rummage Aries' memories, telling her to look at her closely and identify. Hilariously, Aries innocently identifies Dina as a person with a low profile, who easily blends with the background. She is actually surprised that Dina is able to fidget from that fixed place. Dina is almost in tears on hearing such a ruthless sketch of hers, coming from the sweet little mouth of Aries, as if she were some kind of furniture. Aries manages to pull the last string, when she comments that she is stunned that Dina can even talk. Dina begins to wail and complain to Lufasu about the rudeness shown by a cute child without any remorse. Lufasu explains to Aries that Dina has helped her a lot since she got resurrected into this world, so she must not tease her anymore. However, poor Aries had no intention of hurting Dina, because the poor girl is still going through the age of innocence after all, and that is even more concerning to Dina. Lufasu decides to cut the tedious cord and questions Aries about the reason she invaded Sual. Aries is full of contempt because she still hasn't forgiven those vile humans who betrayed Lufasu. She recalls how Lufasu was dreaming about a world that would be free of demons, and yet those humans trampled on her ideals and ruined everything. She resents that if Lufasu were there, they wouldn't have to go through that situation. Not only that, but that war criminal Megis was idolized as a hero and living comfortably. Aries couldn't stand the unforgivable situation. This confirms Lufasu's doubts that Aries' motive was her loyalty towards her. In fact, Lufasu is delighted and honored to be so much loved and revered by someone. She recalls those haunting words that someone is pulling the strings behind Aries. Lufasu hugs her dearly and explains that she is not looking for vengeance because Lufasu is now a happy and content person. But she respects Aries' feelings to avenge her, and that's why she cannot leave those who tried to abuse those pure feelings. A surprised Aries raises her chin, but then informs Lufasu about a treacherous demon from the 7 luminaries that calls himself Mars. The other 6 luminaries are the Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Jupiter, and Saturn. Each one of them represents a day of the week. Aries mentions that Mars came to her a few hundred years ago, and day after day, he whispered some misleading things to her. He chanted that they must defeat Sual together and avenge Lufasu. Now, a stunned Lufasu has never heard of the 7 luminaries. A forever enlightened Dina begins her commentary that the 7 luminaries are the 7 demon generals, and it all started about 80 years ago at Jail Volcano, which is a dormant volcano north of Sual. Apart from Efreet and his son, those 7 are termed as the strongest of all demons. Meanwhile, a triumphant Mars sneers at the falling condition of Sual as he witnesses that Levia has drastically weakened. The eerie demon begins to dance and rejoice with joy, as keeps on calling out to his beloved Efreet Sama. Mars watches in sheer satisfaction, as one of those foolish heroes who rose against Efreet vanishes in thin air. He remembers how troublesome Levia and Megis had been earlier, and then he got lucky somehow and found the mighty Aries. It required much effort from Mars' side to convince him to fight against Sual, because the wavering Aries took months and years to finally get instigated to take revenge on the country of sual. However, that hardship will finally be rewarded according to his calculations, considering the all-out attacks from the elites that he gathered along with Aries. The dreamer is dreaming of the fall of sual, along with the defeat of one of the 7 heroes. However, he realizes that something is not right, as Aries has gotten late. While he is still wondering about Aries' whereabouts, out of the blue, he and his comrades are bombarded with attacks. Mars cannot believe his eyes that any human is capable of putting down those elite monsters he has gathered. A hooded figure appears before him, covering up a little girl quivering with fear. Lufasu checks out Mars and guesses that he must be one of the 7 luminaries, having blue skin and eerie eyes, with black eyeballs and white pupils. Lufasu does not doubt that the weirdo with spiked hair is a demon. It is then Mars spots the rainbow mane on the little girl's head and figures out that she is undoubtedly Aries. He immediately drops to his knees and demands an explanation from Aries about changing sides, since she always had a grudge against humans. He reminds her that she had to avenge her master by rummaging sual. Aries decides to eliminate Mars's misunderstanding, because still she is unable to forgive those humans, and hates the 7 heroes to the core of her heart. But she tries to reason that after she has taken revenge, it won't be the great Lufasu who will be rejoicing but the demons. Aries enforces angrily that Lufasu doesn't want any revenge. In fact, she never did want revenge even before. However, Aries was misled by Mars for fulfilling his own purpose. She has curtly resolved that she won't be lending any hand to the demons and will put a stop to their intentions right now. Mars releases his breath, as he knew that Aries would reach a point like this someday, since he knew from the beginning that Aries had doubts. If she had wanted this, she could have taken sual real quick. But Aries hesitated, before making her final move after a few years. Earlier, Mars thought that Aries would act as his trump card, but after her defiance to act accordingly, she is of no use to him. He appalls her that now she won't survive, after earning the title of a demon's enemy, and turning against Efreet. Mars knows that despite being one of the 12 stars, Aries is wounded after her fight against Levia, so now is his chance to defeat her. Mars plans to personally dispose of both Aries and Lufasu. A wrathful Aries comes forward to protect Lufasu, but she is pitiably struck by Mars. She squirms and lowers to the ground out of pain. The hooded figure takes responsibility for beating Mars, as it seems as if Aries' wounds haven't healed yet. However, Mars haughtily reminds the hooded figure that she can never beat the 7 luminaries. Soon Mars, as weird as he is, begins to chant a bizarre rap song about how he is to begin the secret ceremony of the 7 luminaries, so Lufasu must watch quite closely. He dances and gestures, displaying that he is the demon of ice and fire, Mars. He swirls and twirls wildly, flashing the demon sword made up of heaven's ice and hell's fire fantasy. He croons madly that those twin swords are his emblems, his limbs, his secrets. He then points at the sword in his right hand and hums that it is the sword from hell, its edge will cut through any flesh, and its flame even burns out the soul. Then, he showpieces his left hand, displaying the sword of ice that emits such cold from which no one can escape, and also it sends all hope to naught. Next, he begins to obnoxiously troll about what his swords can do to his enemies, when a bored Lufasu immediately puts a stop to his nonsensical rap track by punching him hard. A stunned Mars bounces like a rubber ball spitting blood, as he couldn't believe his eyes that he had just encountered Lufasu Mafalu. Lufasu scorns a flattened Mars. How could a demon of such a low caliber be a general? As from what she saw, he should be at a level of 300 max. The Jack-in-the-Box Dina pops up suddenly and comments that the quality of the demons has also dropped suddenly. Dina informs her that humans lost against the demons, although they also had casualties. On the other side, almost all the powerful demons have been demolished. The balance is necessary, otherwise the whole world would have turned into a ruin long ago. It can be seen that Mars is kicked off to the other side of the volcano. One of Lufasu's doubts had been cleared before she thought about how the world's equilibrium is actually maintained. Now that she thinks about it, it is quite weird that the demon's military power has remained the same throughout. The protagonist feels that if it were a battle where a large group of high-level players were annihilated, obviously it would be weird if the demon side didn't take any heavy blows as well. Lufasu concludes that in this world, only Efreet can compete with her. Meanwhile, in sual, a lot of humans have been injured. However, a disguised Lufasu fabricates a likely story to Megrez that she safely beat Aries. While she was at it, there was a guy named Mars hanging around from the 7 luminaries. Lufasu narrates that he irritated her so much that she knocked him down as well. Megris is relieved and thankful to Lufasu that their sufferings from the last few years have finally ended. Megris looks at them thoughtfully, and then finally invites them to his residence. He especially mentions that the girl having rainbow hair can also come. A puffed-up Aries has been hiding behind a towering Lufasu all the time and doesn't want to apologize to someone who betrayed Lufasu. At Megris's residence, a lot of queer-looking people rush to him as they were worried sick about him. They keep on rambling about how Levia and Megris are their assets, even though Megris is retired. Hilariously, those people appear like orcs in human clothes to Lufasu. Those orcs keep on oinking how Megris is more important than those bumpkins in the commerce area. Megris tries to reveal the true faces of the top brass, who are supposed to protect the common citizens. However, those selfish beings only think about their own safety and try to gain their superior favor. Megris assures Lufasu that since nobody's here to observe them, she can easily reveal her true identity. Immediately, Lufasu removes her hood to reveal her dazzling self with cosmic and Kai wings. However, Megris is not very surprised to see her, and it seems he was kind of expecting her. Somehow, Lufasu's heart begins to thump wildly at the sight of Megris, as it seems that one of her objectives has been achieved. But now, she has to check whether Megris is the same player as her. There is an awkward silence between the two, as it seems both have met after quite a while. She secretly prays Megris to be a fellow of the same circumstances. She dreamily calls Megris her old friend. Megris looks at her quite perplexed. Even Lufasu has to bite her tongue after those controversial words and looks quite humiliated. But then she realizes that now things have changed quite a lot, as Megris seems to be the resident of this world. And for this reason, he is gazing at her with eyes full of regret and fear. Lufasu ponders that if Megris were a player like her, he would know that the fight between Lufasu and the 7 heroes happened under a mutual agreement. In conclusion, it wasn't a betrayal. She can see shame and remorse in his expression, and only the residents of this world look at her with the same doleful expression. A disappointed Lufasu lowers her head, as if trying to hide from the painful truth. There is an uncomfortable silence prevailing in the surroundings when Megris breaks the ice and wonders why Lufasu was resurrected in this world, now after such a long time. He ponders bitterly that maybe she is here to sneer at them for falling so low. Lufasu looks at him miserably, while Megris has an agonizing smile on his face. Suddenly, her mind begins to boggle, as she is unable to figure out what is happening in this world, where Megris's sworn enemy, which is Lufasu, has been resurrected. He must feel some kind of hostility toward her, but something is different. Suddenly, Lufasu recalls the books she had read in the library that criticized the 7 heroes and the nobles from before, and Aries' words all lead to the notion that glorified the once criminal Lufasu and how she tried to unite the whole human world against the treacherous demons. The thought process is quite painful for Lufasu, as she realizes the reason why Megris is giving her those regretful and remorseful looks. It dawns on Lufasu that it was Megris who had made those researchers cynically criticize those 7 heroes, and had made those researches so readily available in the library. On being caught so bluntly, Megris begins to stutter and breaks into a cold sweat. Lufasu notices that instead of praise, he is looking for some abusive words for the heroes. To Lufasu, it appears that Megris feels responsible for allowing the demons' invasion by defeating her earlier. Lufasu concludes that his troublesome side hasn't changed yet. Lufasu observes that Megris is ashamed, scared, and regretful of this victory instead of feeling proud and victorious. Even though he is getting crushed by his guilty conscience, he cannot afford to express his regrets due to his position. The respect and flattery he is getting from those blood-sucking higher-ups is nothing more than sharp blades. However, Lufasu advises him to follow his own righteous path. At least that is the kind of Megris she had always known. She assures him that even though she lost that battle with the 7 heroes, she doesn't have any regrets about it. Still, Megris is curious about why Lufasu does not have any grudges against the heroes, as at that time she had everything in her hands, and the situation was ideal, only their betrayal ruined her. A pained expression crosses Lufasu's face, but she quickly overcomes it, convincing him that she doesn't feel any hate towards them. In reality, the protagonist didn't feel any emotional connection with that battle, since it was only in a game, but he decides to reply to Megris in Lufasu's style, that the reason the people had revolted against her was simply because she wasn't a trustworthy leader. If Megris and others were dissatisfied with her, and stood up against her simply because she might be lagging somewhere, this is not the reason to hate someone. She insists Megris stop blaming himself as he appears so pitiful that she cannot look at him anymore. She advises him to be more straightforward, just as he was like 200 years ago, since he is still a hero to this world and the people. A flashback is shown where a vivacious and younger Megris is more hopeful about building a new world for elves, because he feels that his race is an introvert and must look more at the world. He doesn't want the elves to live in some deep and cramped forest, but in a more advanced metropolitan country. Lufasu remembers the time Megris, she, and others were having fun, enjoying each other's company. At present, Megris looks at her with a smile and decides to follow her advice. Later, Lufasu heals Levia, who was weakened by Aries, and Megris is thoroughly grateful to her. He knows that as long as he has water, transmutation is quite easier for him. Meanwhile, Lufasu decides to head forward to collect the rest of the 12 stars. Dina informs her about the next destination, which is the royal tomb of the Black Wings, guarded by another star called Libra. The distance between the tomb and Sual is around 500 kilometers. The tomb is actually Lufasu's grave, which was built around 190 years ago by the people who adored Lufasu. It is the largest building in the world, with 108 layers. Libra lies on the top layer, relentlessly protecting the weapons and the fortune Lufasu had before her death. Lufasu wonders why someone would plunder her accessories. Megris replies that the legendary weapons stored in her tomb veil the possibility of the comeback of humanity, so Megris advises her to leave the weapons inside the tomb. As a surprise gift, Megris provides Lufasu with a splendid disguise outfit, consisting of elegant glasses, a white tunic, black slacks, and a red cloak. She is also provided with a camouflage item, which is a bandage that Lufasu can use to hide her wings. The disguise set completely changes Lufasu's look to a svelte debonair damsel, to both Dina and Aries' awe. Lufasu is full of gratitude for Megris, as she didn't expect such kindness from his side. Soon emotional goodbyes are exchanged from both sides, as Megris wishes the trio a good trip. As Lufasu reaches the commerce area, without her cloak for the first time, Gantz goes gaga over her beauty. However, she is here to give him her regards and informs him that she is leaving the country. Gantz become emotional and bid them a tearful farewell. Soon Lufasu wants to check out whether 2 of the remaining heroes are players from her world, as Megris was not the player. Meanwhile, on the other side of the volcano, a distressed Mars is lying, unable to get up from the injuries he had received from Lufasu, the only person the demons fear the most, and he cannot believe that the nightmare is back. Suddenly, a menacing voice croons over him, wondering if he is still alive, because an actor must properly leave the stage when their act is done. That's the rule of the game. The ominous person finishes off the barely alive Mars, calling him in disdain as a pitiful NPC.